All right, so we're going to start by assuming that you have a working Windows installation already, and you're booting from the MCOM tools ISO like this. So when Windows installs, it generally creates 3 partitions. The first one is a small 100 megabyte partition that has the EFI and boot data in it. The second one is your main partition, which is the bulk of the hard drive space. And then the last one is a 500 megabyte recovery partition. What we want to do is resize that second partition to make room for Unraid, or sorry, for MCOM tools. So when the MCOM tools loader comes up, it's all going to look pretty familiar at first. When you get to the installation type, we want to pick something else. Again, if you can try the other one that says alongside, this is really more for people who that's not working for. All right, what that's going to bring up is a list of your partitions. Most likely, what you're actually going to see here is dev/SDA. Since I'm doing this in a virtual machine, it shows up as VDA, but yours will probably say SDA. What you're looking at, this VDA1, like I said, that's that first 100 meg boot manager for Windows. 2 is just a spacing thing. You can ignore that. And then you see here where it says VDA3 NTFS. This is the largest partition, and that's the one where Windows actually lives. And then if you look down here, you can see this last partition here. It's only 500 meg. Also NTFS, that's your recovery partition for Windows. You can delete that if you want to, but it is kind of nice to have on there in case Windows gets corrupt. Sometimes the recovery tools in here can bring Windows back to life. For this example, we'll leave it in there, but if you wanted to get rid of it and recover the space, you would just hit the minus sign here, and it would go away like this, and you would see that it just rolls into the free space. But like I said, we'll go back to the original partition table, and we'll treat it like we were just trying to fit MCOM tools in here. So we'll select the big NTFS partition and hit change. Something to note is this used size. So you can't go any smaller than this, and really you need to leave some buffer on that too. So I'm going to make mine 50 gigabytes, and that should leave about 12 gig free. If you had a larger hard drive, you could make a little more space for Windows. You can resize these later, but it's a giant pain in the rear, and you can screw stuff up pretty easily. So I wouldn't do that. For use as, just say do not use this partition. What that means is, how is MCOM tools going to use this partition? And you don't want it to mess with it at all. You just want it to live on the hard disk and have Windows see it whenever it does see it. It's going to give you a thing about resizing it. That's fine. If it gives you an error and says, hey, that's not big enough, you're going to have to pick a bigger value for the size, because it has a couple other constraints besides just the amount of raw data on that partition. It's where that data lives in the partition can affect the minimum size you can pick there too. But as you can see, it resized this VDA3, and now it's created free space between VDA3 and VDA4 in the size of about 56 gig, which is enough for our MCOM tools. So with that highlighted, we'll go down here, hit the plus sign. It's going to default to the maximum available size. Leave those alone. ext4 is right. And then the mount point, we want to pick the / or root, and that just says, hey, this is going to be our root file system for ETC. Hit OK, and it's going to recalculate everything, and when it comes back up, you'll see now that there's a VDA5 partition mounted at root in the type of ext4. It's going to format it, and it'll be 56 gig in size. The only other thing to check, which shouldn't have changed, is this bootloader installation, and yes, you want that installed to the VDA header rather than any of the individual partitions. And then we just hit install now. Continue. So something else to think about is that before you mess with this stuff, you can really screw up your system. You're obviously not going to hurt the hardware, but if you have a Windows installation that you care about, you should back that up first. There's a tool called Macrium Reflect, and I'll put a link for that in here. But there's a free version that does everything that you need for backing up entire systems. You can download it, you can make a backup, you can actually make the backup right to a thumb drive or to a network drive or something like that. And then the other option you want to look for in that software is make a recovery disk, which will actually generate an ISO file. Throw that on your Ventoy drive, and then if you have that and your Macrium image of your baseline system on the Ventoy drive, at any point you can boot into that Macrium recovery environment and rewrite your system to the hard drive. So when my ToughPads came in, I grabbed an initial image of the Windows installation that was on those disks and saved that off as its own thing. And then after I installed MCOM tools alongside Windows and had things configured the way I wanted them, I went ahead and grabbed an image of that too and threw on there. Just lets me, at any point, if I corrupt something, I can go back, boot from my thumb drive, write that image, pull the thumb drive out, start back up, and be back where I was without having to go through all these steps again.
A few moments later.
All right, so it's done. We'll hit restart, pull the drive out whenever it says to, and then boot it back up. Cool. So once we boot back up, we'll see that we've got all the different boot options. So there's MCOM tools, here's Windows. We'll go ahead and try that. And there it is. And if we restart, we'll get the option for MCOM tools. And there we go.